So we're recording right now. Thank you so much for doing this interview.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So I just wanted to dive right in and start with some of the film questions and then lead up to more of the video game related questions,
Great.
seeing as how they're kind of mixed. So the first question I want to ask you is, like, how do you find the perfect balance of true facts, atmospheric shots, and those jump scare moments to really give that kind of horror sense vibe? And for those of you who may not have read the article I've written before, this is a movie about the Phoenix incident where people have actually seen like UFO sightings, and you explore that actual true fact event and take it to different areas. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for me, as a storyteller, as a director, as a writer, I always want to base everything in facts because I think that the truth is always scarier than fiction. And one of the things I used to love about shows like the X-Files and other properties like that, where you would know something that came out of science or something that came out of history, and now you get a story that sort of explores the what if around that. And so for me, writing this story, I really wanted to explore this sighting, which is the largest mass UFO sighting in U.S. history. This is something that 30,000 people witnessed, and the governor came out on CNN and said that he saw a ship, and you had the vice mayor doing an investigation, and John McCain even investigated the light. And so when you have conspiracy theories that when so many people say they saw something and then the military or the government kind of denies it, then you have a lot of freedom as a storyteller to explore, well, what happened between both sides of that. And in balancing the horror elements or the jump scares or the visual effects or how you're going to treat it as a filmmaker, I think all that's going to come out of that what if. So if you actually look at the facts and you look at the story that you're telling and you find these opportunities to say, well, what if this happened at this moment? And what if the explanation for this event was actually this? Those scares, and that just comes out of the actual events themselves because your mind, I think, fills in the rest. I saw a long time ago, there's a movie that Ridley Scott directed, is the first Alien film. And you never saw this alien for more than a second or two at a time. Yet it was one of the most terrifying creatures because if you got a glimpse of it and you saw what it was doing, then your mind would fill in the rest. And that was ultimately, I think, more terrifying than just seeing it the whole time. And Spielberg did that with Jaws, and a number of directors have done that over the years. But when it's something that's real or potentially real, I think that it makes it much scarier and something that hits home a lot more.
Yeah, so I definitely saw that when I was watching your film. Many of those shots, you and your team did a really good job of making those shots feel like they were grounded at that time period. The film takes place in 1997. You see a lot of those shots in that kind of granular digital kind of film, and you see that a lot of the scary moments came from the fact where I didn't know if it was actually pulled from newspaper recordings or from newsroom recordings, or if this was you taking liberties. And I thought that really did add to the horror factor a lot.
And that was a really interesting part for us because we actually shot the film all on 4K Reds and on these high-end formats, so we could add in our visual effects and our aliens and our creatures and our ships. But then we had to bring it down to 1997 technology, so we brought it onto VHS decks and we put it through old-school CRT televisions, and then we reshot footage off of these old screens and VHS decks and actually took off the covers of the VHS decks and put our hands in the mechanism so we would get all the tracking errors and slow down the footage occasionally to get all the snow on screen. And so a lot of stuff you see is actually real of the era recordings, even though it was recorded at a much higher format for our visual effects teams. It could make it much more authentic and blend into the original footage that we got from the era.
So I have to tell you that that much effort and work that you put in really did pay off in those specific scenes. I do want to talk to you when you said about these the shots you make in horror where the less you know and the more your mind fills in the blanks, the scarier it becomes. Was it a little bit helpful setting this movie in this time period, 1997, where the actual format that's used to record it can be seen as, oh, I can't really get a good detail of this scary monster? Well, that's just because of the time period. Did it afford you some kind of leeway where you might not have to go so detailed with the graphics because you know the output format wouldn't be that high detail?
Well, when I wrote the script and I knew that what our budget was going to be going in, which is pretty small, and the budget was just over $1 million for the film, so I knew that we were going to be going up against films like Independence Day and these other big, alien invasion films where they have 100 times the budget of what our film was going to be. So I kind of took the approach that less is more, and that you weren't going to be able to see a lot of the aliens. And in fact, when I originally wrote the script, you were only going to see shadows and a couple other things, and you were never going to see the aliens at all. And in fact, there was only one scene in the original script that I wrote at the very end, not to give any spoilers to your audience, where you actually see firsthand proof, and you actually see a close-up, and anyone who's seen the film will understand that. And we were going to build this all prosthetically, and we were talking to a really big visual effects house that actually does prosthetic designs. And we ended up teaming up with the guys at Baked Effects, and these guys do the dragons from Game of Thrones, and their work on that show is spectacular. And I've been working with one of my friends in the game industry, because that's my whole background. I've been working in games for the past 15, 20 years. So we had a really cool design for the alien that we wanted to do, but knowing that we just didn't have the budget to really pull that off on screen until we met with Baked. And these guys, we took this design and we fleshed out a full working prototype of our what we call Phenomorph. And these aren't the pilots that are piloting these ships in the movie, but these are these attack creatures that are cast encounters. And I wanted something that was really vicious, really fast, and something that was going to be pretty terrifying. And boy, we did our first visual effects team test with these guys, and it was so convincing that it was real, that it wasn't a CG effect, that it wasn't a prosthetic, that it was actually something that looked real, that we started building all of our alien shots to incorporate that. And I think that's been the biggest struggle for me, especially as a first-time director, is to really know that balance of how much you can show and how much not to show. Because in a script where I wrote it where you weren't supposed to see the aliens, here I am introducing them in scenes where you can see them a little bit more. And even though we're hiding them with some of the VHS effects and hiding them in the darkness and hiding them in all the action that's going on, you still get some pretty good glimpses. And that's been one of the things I think people are really surprised by this film, especially the size of it, is that the creatures do look pretty surprisingly good. And as a filmmaker, I just wasn't sure if that was the right call or not. And some people are saying, no, don't show any aliens, and other people say, no, we want to see the aliens. So it's been a decision that I don't think I'll ever really come to terms with. But I'm very happy with what we've got for sure. But you just never know, what is the right decision when it comes to that.
Okay, so my next question would be, what did you want the audience to feel when they just left the film? So just to give you a sense, a lot of the scenes that were more towards the end of the film were really about these four guys who went through this tragic incident, and really seeing them just being natural, and the music was very melancholy. It was giving this sense of sadness, showing how human these people were. They weren't just some casualty of some big sci-fi war. They were really human beings. So was that kind of the goal? Did you want to have the audience be having questions in their head, feeling some kind of anger towards any of this conspiracy, or feeling some sort of sadness for the characters, or a mix?
Yeah, there's another 2 hours of the film that's available online through our viral campaign. And you can find it through all these various hidden websites and other things. And it really started as this investigation into these missing guys that had nothing to do with aliens. It had nothing to do with the Phoenix Lights. It was one of the longest unresolved missing persons cases in Arizona history based on the Lauder case. And so through our viral campaign and online, you start to find all the lives of these men, what they were doing, who they were. One of the guys was an artist. Another guy was a musician who was going to Hollywood to get his record deal. Another guy was a sports enthusiast, and another guy had a military family who lost his brother in the Gulf War. And so some of it we touch on it in the movie, but these characters are actually pretty fleshed out. They're all based on actual different people that we sort of, even though we fictionalized much of the story, we were still basing it on real accounts. So we wanted to tell a very human story in the middle of this amazing conspiracy that took place in March of '97. And coming out of the theater, we really wanted people to question what they know, what they believe, and to then go online and to continue the story. And I won't give away any spoilers, but if you watch not only through the film but through the credits, there's a kind of a pretty brutal scene at the very, very end of the credits. And that is actually the first rabbit hole into the story of how the film even began and what triggered all these events and how the tapes came to light into this film. And the film is presented as part documentary and part footage, and this documentarian has sort of put together footage from this investigation as well as from the military and found footage and other elements. So I really want the audience to kind of walk out questioning what they believe and starting to follow this rabbit hole into our viral campaign online. And if you go to sites like MaricopaMissing.com or you go to AmericanCrimes.tv or KWBV News, you can see some of these websites that are part of this campaign and build out the fiction of our world. And it really blurs the line between what's real and what we made up for the film.
So just to go back to your previous work, you talked about how you're very involved in video games. I know this with many of your credits, you are credited in directing video games more towards the line of like voice acting. I noticed in one particular game it was only the voice director. So did that kind of directing experience in video games, that kind of voice directing, kind of give you any kind of basis for something like directing a film, or is it like a completely whole different ball game?
For me, this was the most natural transition of anything that I've done in my career. When I'm directing on games, I do motion capture, we do green screen shoots, we do live action shoots, we do voiceover, we do ADR, we do facial capture. In video games, we're always Frankensteining performances from a number of different techniques. And most people know my work recently from talent directing. So working with the actors, all the performances, especially on cinematics or any of the performances in the game. And some games I'm doing all of the performance, and sometimes it is just the voice. But you're always solving problems on set. You're always figuring out how you're going to achieve these very natural performances in a very unnatural environment. When you're working on games, every aspect of that performance is built and manufactured and put together so we can generate the animation and bring the eyes together, bring the mouth together, bring the facial animation, the body, and the story, much less all the characters and multiplayer aspects together. So as a director, I'm very comfortable working with actors on numerous levels. And moving those performances to a motion picture was fantastic because now you're on location, everyone's in costume, you have everything set up, and you can see what you're going to achieve right away as you're recording it. So it's very visceral. You're getting everything done at once, but you also have a very compressed time schedule. So, shooting this film, we shot this film over 14 days, did a handful of pickups. So within 20 days, the whole film was shot, whereas in a video game, we'll work on a game for almost 2 years. So it's a very compressed time schedule, and you do a lot of work in post-production and editing. So I enjoyed the process, and I was able to take a lot of the techniques that we do in video games and apply it to this film in terms of the way we shot stuff. We took a lot of motion capture techniques. We took a lot of the performances, and all the actors that are in the game, in the film, come from the game space. And these are, Troy Baker from The Last of Us, and Yuri Lowenthal from The Prince of Persia and Sunset Overdrive. We had all these great actors that have been on these games that we've worked on together for years, and now you're really seeing who they are, not just as individuals, but as these fantastic on-screen actors.
Yeah, I was going to ask as the next question. You work with many of these voice talents in the video game space. Was it a little bit comforting to know like they were the first actors you'd be working with on a film?
Absolutely. I wanted to be surrounded by friends that I knew their performances. I already had a shorthand with these guys in directing. And if I say that I need to do something faster or tighter or darker, they understand what that terminology means. And you develop a shorthand with each actor in terms of their performance and trying to achieve that performance. And I had brought all of these actors out to Arizona 2 years before we started production, and we shot a little 20-minute proof of concept with them in the sighting place where the actual UFO sighting took place. So they already knew the environment, they knew the world, they knew how harsh the conditions were, and we based it on a lot of characters that not only I was very familiar with, but who they were as individuals. And I think that one of the reasons why they do feel so natural together is that you guys are all friends. Everyone knows each other. We've all worked together for so many years. So when you're seeing them, joke around and do things together, that is really who they are and how they treat each other off camera as well. So it was a very natural performance, and it wasn't only improving, but it was based on just performances that we knew that they would go to instant. So as we were on a very compressed time schedule, we weren't having to fall into these characters. They were already there to begin with.
Okay, so finally, I wanted to ask you one last question about the video game space and this transition. Was it difficult for you, a director who's trying to kind of blur the lines between interactive entertainment and really film, which is a very passive entertainment? Did you find some difficulty in getting the audience to kind of go all in on the interactiveness? Have you seen like it's difficult to get people to go out of their way to these viral marketing campaigns and really go full in on these extra videos that you've included? I know the release that's going to come out includes an extra app that will let you then, as you're watching the movie, find all these extra features along the way.
Right. Well, one of the things that we've found is that we've actually had more engagement doing it interactively than traditionally what a normal film would have. We've had already over 20 million engagements on our viral campaign. And even one of our segments that was just one of our UFO clips that came out last year went on the front cover of the Mirror UK. It was picked up by 2,000 sites and was shared worldwide. So the idea that every segment of the movie in itself is its own viral clip of UFO clips or a cult attack or something that happened with guys, we knew that the film, being based on real events and having this footage in one place, was going to be viral in nature. So the interactivity of the film, not only the way we shot it, but the way we're distributing it, and now we're going to be featuring it in this app, allows everyone to explore that investigation in a kind of a new way. And we're hoping that that opens up people's minds to how films can be distributed in the future, how audiences can interact with content, and not like a choose your own adventure. The idea is not that you can make up your own story, but you can find the parts of the story that appeal to you. So if you want to see the alien segments, you actually want to go into the real military footage, or you want to identify all the original eyewitness footage, or you want to go into the story of the families, you can find all this as part of an investigation. And it's sort of like a real life X-Files in a sense that the app becomes a tool that allows the community to actually work together to contribute content, not only from the film itself, but their own content, and be a living, breathing application that the audience really is participating in. So we're finding that audiences are embracing this, and as much as I'm proud to have a film that's coming out in theaters and on video on demand, the fact that we have so many millions of people already engaging our characters and our story online is very rewarding as a writer and as a director. And I think that you're going to see a lot more projects in the future take this approach.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much, and good luck to the video release that's coming out. I just wanted to just quickly end on a few fun questions, such as there was a scene where all of the four guys are at a small restaurant, they're just hanging around, and then you see one shot of a video game. I thought, was that maybe a callback because it's such a classic video game with Pac-Man? Does that have a special place in your heart?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just the fact that we were there, that was actually one of the scenes that we did when we were first prototyping the film. And I've done a lot of work with that company, and I thought that it was very appropriate to show that these video game actors were playing a video game in their own story. So that was a little bit of an Easter egg. And there's a lot of things, actually, if you notice in that scene in the film, you'll notice me in the background there as well. So there's a couple cameos in there that are fun.
And just finally, the last question: do you think like getting these voice actors to do more of these motion pictures will kind of open a doorway for going in both ways, like actors based on film going into video games, and video game voice actors going into traditional film? Do you hope for that?
Absolutely. There's so many fantastic actors that are working in video games right now, and I think that sometimes they're unfairly only referred to as voice actors, but when you see what they can do, not only in motion capture or facial capture, but as evidenced by this film, what they do live and on camera, there's some just fantastic talent out there. And in a day where you've seen so many celebrities moving from film and television into the video game space, and sometimes that works and sometimes that doesn't work, but I think that now you're seeing an opportunity for actors who are working in this very technical space of video games are now having the liberty to work in motion pictures and television. I think it's a great opportunity for actors and producers and the audience to see this new talent emerging out of this field.
All right. Well, Keith, thank you so much for your time. Good luck to the movie coming out. It's already came out in theaters. It's coming out in home release with all the extra features, all the extra things you can get on the app as you're watching the movie and go right into all the conspiracy theories.
Yeah, absolutely. It'll be in theaters this Friday, actually, starting on April 8th, and it'll also be on video on demand. And then you'll see the Blu-ray, DVD, and the app come out after that. And so we're excited to share that. And you can definitely look online and keep finding more stuff on our website, which is phoenixincident.com, and that'll continue the investigation.
So just one quick thing. Do you ever get, between the two releases that you're talking about on theaters and on home video, which are the ones do you really hope will, like, which kind of metric do you really see as more successful in your eyes? Like the home video release where people are really engaging with it, or the wider, like, theater release?
Well, the movie was mixed to be in theaters, and sound, especially with my background in audio and sound is a real big component to the movie. And so, unfortunately, when you're watching it on home video and you're watching it on VOD, a lot of people don't have their home theater systems set up with sound speakers and their subwoofers, so they're missing a bit of some of the extra thrills and extra stuff that was designed for the film, hearing aliens behind you and other elements that are there. So, but at the same time, it being an event-type film, we did a large release with Fathom Events, and it played very well there, which is why we're going wider with it right now. But I think as a metric, you're going to see more sales on VOD just because a lot of people can't make it up to theaters anymore, and a lot of people don't get that opportunity to go see things in theater. So as much as I would love the audience to go there, I think a bigger judge of our success is going to be on VOD, and it's going to be out on all platforms starting on Friday. So we're really excited to do that because they can instantly go from watching it there into our viral campaign online and continue to find that story. So I think that you're going to see more of our audience embracing that digitally, but I hope they'll hook up their subwoofers and surround sound and enjoy the rest of the sound.
Mm-hmm. So thank you again so much for your time.
Absolutely.
Have a great day.
All right. Take care. Thank you.